to
This
have more
conference
people
will
with
now
us.
be recorded.
All right, now we're recording. So good morning again to everyone. My name is Melissa Miklos. I'm Communication Officer at FEDARENE. And this is actually the third Circular Economy webinar that FEDARENE is hosting. The two others took place last year. I will put you the links of the previous ones in the chat so you can watch them and access the presentations. The first one was an introduction to circular economy. The second one was rather focusing on energy because, as you might know, FEDARENE is a network of energy agencies and regional authorities, and our goal is to facilitate the energy transition in Europe. So but for this one, as you know, we will talk about recycling and reducing waste, since this is also a big dimension of the European Green Deal and circular economy topic. So I will move now to the short questions. So if you joined our webinars in the past, you know we love Slido for interaction with you, the audience, with you guys. So please connect and we will have a first warm questions, as I said. I will do it with you. So my advice to you, if you have a smartphone close by, use your smartphone for the Slido questions. This way you can leave the screen for the presentations. And the code CEBE is for Circular Economy Beyond Energy, which is the title of this webinar. So yeah, as you see, this question has nothing to do with circular economy yet. This is just to make sure you understand the principle and you're already here, and to wait for a few more participants because we had a lot of registration. So I'm expecting maybe some more people. So let's see, what temperature is it in your town, city you are in right now? I am in Belgium and it is also very cold, -7. We might have a lot of people in Belgium, or the temperature is really quite the same in a lot of countries. 15 degrees, some of you are lucky. 14 degrees then, okay. But a lot of you are experiencing the same wave of cold as us in Belgium, at least. So hang in there, it will soon get better, hopefully. All right, 37 people connected. I think it's a good start for the first question. I think now we're ready for our webinar. So let's move to the rest. I already introduced you to the webinars we had in the past. This is the last one for now, at least. So I'm glad you're here. As I said, we have a dense agenda today, so I will introduce all of our speakers just before their presentation. We have people from across Europe. We are first starting with a European perspective, and then as we go, we will have more and more local and regional examples. So now, without further ado, I want to introduce our first speaker, Tisse Stelpstra, from the Committee of the Regions, but also Regional Minister of the Province of Drenthe in the Netherlands. And Tisse was actually the rapporteur in the European Committee of the Regions for the Circular Economy Action Plan. So he will tell you a bit more about this and also his perspective of circular economy in his region. So Tisse, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Melissa. I hope you can understand me now.
Yes, perfectly. Please go ahead.
Okay, that's good. Nice to be here. Nice to be your guest this morning. It's also very cold here in the northern Netherlands, -7, -8. So it's also lovely to see outside. There's a lot of snow. Well, as you said, last year I wrote an opinion on the new Circular Economy Action Plan. for the Committee of Regions, and this opinion was adopted in October last year. And I'm very happy to share some points of my opinion with you. But let me start, and I did it in other seminars and webinars, with a general remark on the current context. We are in a very urgent crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, and we must act without hesitation, because it's about health, it's about life, and let's hope it's a temporary crisis. And there's no doubt that it's a crisis with great effects in the world's economy, and a recovery from that crisis is, of course, needed. But there is also another crisis, and that is also about health and also about life, and that's the climate crisis. And where COVID seems an acute illness, the climate crisis is an insidious disease, which, on the other hand, just more manifests itself as acute. And I make this remark because COVID had shown some side effects which were helpful in the recovery from that other disease. What has COVID shown us? They showed us how quick recovery on the environment can be. In a very short time, rivers got clean, even air pollution, even in New Delhi, and I've been there, so I know how bad it is. Even air pollution in New Delhi decreased. And we have also seen how resilient people and the economy are. In no time, a complete shift to working at home, digitalized meetings like this, no flying anymore. It was a very great shift. And I think it is important that we keep that effects. But also, to be honest, I'm an optimist, but we have a lot of work to do in order to prevent us from reverting to old behavior. And therefore, for the future, it is crucial that the European Commission and the member states steer the investments from the EU recovery plan in such a way as to guarantee long-term economic, social, and environmental progress. And of course, at the same time, they need to reduce resource use, avoid and remove hazardous substances, and improve circularity of materials and systems. And let me say something about the question why. Why are we busy with circular economy? Because existing linear economies prove to be wasteful and environmentally damaging, as well as dependent on globalized linear supply chains and cheap virgin raw materials. This is not new, but COVID-19 has shown us how we can see it in a better way. And the circular economy is an instrument that can help decouple economic growth from resource use and environmental impact, and therefore it can help to shape a pathway towards a more resilient and low carbon economic recovery. And what should be done? Well, as I said, COVID is a wake-up call. And in order to reduce dependency and strengthen security of supply, I think it is important that the European Commission and the member states should orchestrate resource management, especially scarce and critical, and that the development towards an EU resource policy platform should be explored. Another important point is that to achieve the goals we want, we need targets on several subjects, and one overall target should be that we relate circular economy to the reduction of CO2. And I call, in my opinion, on the European Commission to accompany every key action with an estimated result and an ambitious timescale. I believe there is a need to implement at EU level a total resource use reduction target in order to succeed in decoupling growth and resource use. And therefore, cooperation between countries is very important, and I think the European Commission should facilitate it. Linked to targets is innovation, because innovation will help us to set standards. And one of the recommendations, in my opinion, is that the reached innovation of today must be the standard within 5 years. We can achieve it, so we must do it. Another point is that the extended producer responsibility is a crucial strategy to ensure proper business cases, in which producers also look into safe and circular by design consequences. and it will also help to prevent waste. And just talking about waste, many crucial resources labeled waste are available in Europe. And in order to reach a true circular economy, the mind shift needs to switch towards the paradigm there is no waste. Waste doesn't exist. What we call waste is a collection of resources. So don't waste any waste. And I said something about it in my opinion. I said we have to shift towards a zero waste mindset. That is very important for all of us. It's not only governments who need that mindset, but also our citizens. All materials should be designed in such a way that they become neither nutrients for the biosphere or new materials for the next cycle of use. And I think a quicker and easier legal framework for end-of-waste and byproduct criteria is needed for speeding up. And I said also I think part-times are very important. But I am insisting also, in my opinion, that to validate the principle there is no waste and to prevent the use of virgin resources, for instance, an obligation to use recycled materials is essential. And I think the European Commission has to set criteria to that. Of course, I'm a member of regional government, and I know and I see how important the role of local and regional authorities is. They are the authorities which are near to the citizens. And I know the fact and circumstances and progress are not homogeneous in Europe. They're not homogeneous within the member states. We have frontrunners, we have laggers, and that's the reality. But it is a big challenge to use this reality as a great opportunity for cooperation. But one of the biggest risks and challenges, and these are my last words, will be the skepticism and ignorance. That's where we have a lot of work to do. We must convince our citizens about the importance of this transition to circular economy and show them it's not only making the world better in an environmental way, but it is also the next step to more welfare. And we, people like me, politicians, have a big responsibility. And that's important to know. But I'm an optimist, I said, and I'm hopeful. And COVID-19 has shown us that we are resilient. In no time, we made the change to the digital economy. So I hope we have the same urgency, you and I together, to this climate crisis, to do the same thing so we can do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, These, for this very interesting perspective. I have written down several questions for you, but so we said we would take one question after each presentation, and then of course there will be the general Q&A with all speakers at the end of this webinar. I hope all speakers can be there then. So let me check. I don't think we have questions for the audience yet, so I will take on the privilege to ask one of my questions. And I think yes, I would like to know, since you are also regional minister in a region, as you mentioned, what did you do so far to defeat the skepticism and ignorance of people? Because I think all speakers will agree today this is the biggest challenge, or at least one of the most important challenge in circular economy. So do you have any advice maybe for our audience, what they can do at the local and regional level?
Yes, it's very nice. Before this meeting and during this meeting, I have also a meeting of my board, and we had a discussion this morning. And one important thing we said, we have to do things close to the citizens. We have the big story, and we have the big story in Europe. We have the big story in the world. But what's essential for citizens? One of my colleagues, he was collecting waste this weekend in the snow. He had two big bags full of plastics. That's close to the citizen. They understand. I'm in my portfolio. Big part is energy transition. Well, we can get the big story, but I'm putting a lot of effort in how can you make your home, your own house, better in a way of energy? How can you save energy in your house? Very close to the citizen. When we talk the little talk, it will explore the big talk. I think that's an important thing to know, to understand.
Start little, it's less scary. That's a good advice. And also I wrote down, well, this is not a question, but just a comment. There is no waste. I know this will also be mentioned by some other speakers, and I think that's also an excellent way to put it. So thank you again very much, Stacey. I'm glad we finally were able to include you in our webinar series. I will put the link to the opinion of the Committee of the Regions in when I send it to participants with all the content from presentations. I see we have a question for you, Tisa, but if you don't mind, I will ask Francisco to ask it at the end, as I said, during the Q&A. This way we're still on time for our other presentations. So now let's move on to our second speaker with Hannu Koppanen from Central Finland. So now we're actually moving on to the local and regional examples, but you also have to know that this series of webinar is organized in partnership with the Regional Council of Central Finland and Hannu as its representative. So Hannu is actually a development manager within the Regional Council and an expert in bioeconomy, which is also the strength of the region. So I'm really glad that he's here with us today to share his wide knowledge of the topic. I forgot to mention before Tacey spoke, but actually it was very concise, so it was fine. But if our speakers are over time, I will remind them orally that they have 2 minutes left. So don't be offended, guys. Unfortunately, Hannu doesn't have a webcam. We tried it, it doesn't work. But you can focus on what he says because, as I said, he's an expert in the topic. So Hannu, please, I'm giving you control and you have the floor.
Thank you, Melissa. It's a pleasure to be here. And prior I start my presentation, I need to say that I very much agree on what Tisa said. And my main goal during the next 10 minutes is to show how we in Central Finland are putting these circular economy actions in place to boost not only the circular economy, but also our regional economy and, of course, climate change mitigation. When we, sorry, I was too fast. So when we talk about circular economy, on a regional level, Melissa, you need to help me. I cannot go backward.
Sorry
now.
about that. Wait.
Yeah.
Now
Okay.
it's fine.
When we talk about the circular economy on the regional level, it's very much our motivations are identical to the EU level and the circular economy action plan. Of course, we want to decrease the consumption of our pristine materials, but as I already said, it's also for us economical motivations. We want to see more jobs in circular economy, and we want to boost our regional economies that way. So how we have done it in Central Finland is we have via various different projects studied our regional strengths, and we have identified those spots with those areas that are the most potential for business, especially to grow and to boost. And I'm giving you now some few examples what we have done. So, of course, when you think about Finland in general, the first two things that come to your mind are it's extremely cold here, and we have lots of biomass available, especially forest-related biomass. But it's not only the pristine forest biomass or the agriculture we are tackling. We are now more and more interested in the side streams from agroecosystems, but also from the forest industry. And these different side streams include wood chips, bark, lignin, and they all have quite good potential to create new value-added products. Of course, when we talk about the biomass, I need to mention biogas and the work that has been conducted in the region to boost the biogas production outside the grid area. And there we have quite good examples. My colleague Outi has told you those ones on our earlier webinars. But it's not only the biomass we are focusing on. For example, the University of Jyväskylä, they've been developing novel technologies for urban mining and how to collect these valuable metals from electronic wastes, including the gold, copper, neodymium from magnets. And this chemical approach has been shown its potential, and we are very much now looking forward to these ideas and how they can actually help our EU level dependency on these rare earth metals that we need in our electrification of, e.g., mobility. So this is one good example what we are doing in central Finland. Also, when talking about the EU level circular economy action plan, there is quite a lot of attention to packing and plastics, and as we all know, those are of great importance when we think about the wastes or this collection of resources, as Garcia put it in his intervention. What we have done is quite a lot of research and development to replace plastics with renewable and recyclable materials, so to prevent the plastics to even enter to the system. We have high hopes in especially wood-based, cellulose-based materials that can have high hygiene level and that are also biodegradable and compostable. So in these studies and in this topic, VTT, the National Technology Research Institute of Finland, has very, very good expertise. But it's not only about the packing and plastics. It's also, as stated in the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, it's also about the textiles. And the textiles in central Finland, we have currently 2 independent pilot level factories that are testing these novel technologies to create cellulose-based materials to replace cotton. As you know, cotton cultivation is very, very problematic from the irrigation point of view, also from the area it requires for the cultivation. So with the help of these new technologies, we can create more sustainable textiles that have consumed less water and less resources in the manufacturing processes. And here are the name of these two companies. Spinnova, it's a startup company, and the other logo is Metsä Group, who is also testing the pilot level factory. And if I remember right, the investments in these textile pilots, they are currently around 60 million euros in central Finland for those two pilot factories. And finally, of course, I need to speak also what are not our strengths and what we should focus on in the future. Of course, when we talk about the circular economy, we need to find a solution for the industrial level, as I explained a little bit from the forestry sector, but also from the other industry sectors, mining, all the production, because there are the big masses of the of these potential new resources. Also, and I think later on in the series of presentations today, we will learn more about construction sector and its potential. But also, as a little bit
Sorry,
Jussi
Anu,
already.
I just want to give you the 2 minutes heads up. I'm very sorry to interrupt, but
Good. I have only a few sentences left. So we also, as Jussi said earlier, we need to also concentrate on innovations and how to include the digitalization into the circular economy. But also, as stated in the earlier presentation, we need awareness rising in all levels and these behavioral changes. And there I put some numbers from the study we conducted 2017 from the household wastes in central Finland. So as you can see, even though we have quite well organized recycling system and recycling system already on the spots for the households, we still lose enormous amount of resources, like 30% bio waste in our mixed household waste, 30% packing. So plastics and cardboard is there still in our mixed waste, and also textile. So even though this is not the biggest most problem in the circular economy and the biggest most raw material source, but it's also quite remarkable how bad we are conducting on our homes. So I will stop here now, and Melissa, I think there is time for one question, right?
indeed, thank you very much, Hanu. So please don't hesitate to type in your questions through the chat or to Slido. I am looking at both places. There were a lot of different elements actually. So I'm sure there will be questions, and indeed there is already one from Ed Melvin. He's asking you, Hanu, do you think the biggest challenge is widespread education and behavior change rather than policy lobbying?
I think what we need is both. I think we need, and we are on the European level, mainly due to now Green Deal, we are on the right track. We have identified on the policy level that circular economy and these different resources are of great importance. And that is something that hopefully will go down to these big waste streams or big resource streams in industry, and especially in industry and in construction. But simultaneously, I think it's also behavioral changes. Behavioral changes, what we are doing in our homes, what we are doing in our environment, when it comes to these pristine raw materials.
Central Finland is leader in biomass industry, says Francisco. Which are the trends in circular economy in this kind of industries? Okay, let's take this one more question.
Okay, I think it's the in our case, because mainly in central Finland, the bioeconomy and bioindustry is very heavily relying on the forest biomass, and the forest industry has been quite circular by nature already for decades. But I think the trend there is also, and we already see it, that they are now closing the loops. They are going towards these closed circles and also searching new added value products from the side streams. So I think in that sense, the biomass-based industry is giving us some hope in general, and I hope that this similar trend is seen also in the other sectors of industry.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Francisco, for your questions and helping moderating me. And thank you, Hannu, for this very interesting presentation. Something I will keep in mind. I think there is, according to what you said, two big sides. So we have to work on awareness raising and behavior. And then there is also the innovation to it and the practical organization on the ground. A good example to that, maybe some of you attended our series on energy sufficiency, organized in partnership with the AREC EDF, the energy agency in the Paris region. And actually, we had a webinar on digital green IT and digital sufficiency, where we were focusing on behavior. But now I see Hannu is working on electronic waste, so it's very interesting. With those two combined, we can really improve our behavior and our policy around IT. But enough talking for me. Now we have another Slido question before having our third speakers, because we have two this time. So please join us on Slido again. This is a warm-up question because our presenters afterwards will focus on construction waste and plastic. So please vote. You can only choose one answer, of course. In your city region, which sector is the most advanced in its transition to circular economy? Plastic, construction, maybe both are more or less at the same stage, or none. I actually have to admit, I'm not sure. I would say plastic. And most people for now seem to have the same trend as I think we do in my city in Liège and in Belgium. Maybe we focus more on plastic, maybe it's easier. Let's see what our speakers will have to say about this. So let's close this poll for now, and it's time for me to introduce our third speakers, Céline Bonnet and Grégoire Tonnier, who work for the Regional Agency for Energy and Environment of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes in France. So you might know them as Ora2E. They advise local authorities in their projects related to circular economy, energy efficiency, and green public procurement. And they're respectively in charge of the Interreg project Plasteco on plastic waste for Grégoire, and the Interreg project Conderef on construction and demolition waste for Céline. So they will share their experience with these two projects with us. Please, Céline and Grégoire, you have the floor.
Thank you, Melissa. So I'll be the one starting the presentation. Good morning, everyone. Our presentation is about how Interreg projects leverage to set up regional action plans. And we will use two examples. One example is about plastic waste, and the other example is about building waste reduction. The next slide, we can move to the first presentation. Next slide. We have two Interact projects which were really very interesting opportunities for the region, because actually the Regional Action Plan for Circular Economy was voted in December 2019, and these two sectors were among the 5 key industrial sectors which were targeted for the action plan. So we are very happy to get this project and to go on working on these issues. The two projects are quite similar, 8 partners, 1.6 million euros of budget, but Plastico project is a 4-year project, whereas the conserving project is a 5-year project. As most Interact projects, the objectives are to improve waste management, also to increase awareness and promote resource efficiency, which has been developed by our two previous speakers. And also it's about implementing a solution through regional action plans, which is the goal of these Interact projects. In the next slide, we present briefly the methodology for this Interact project. And we have just to keep in mind that it's a 2-stage project, because the first stage is about the state of the art and regional and EU meetings. Then you develop an action plan and you have 1 or 2 years to set up these action plans. Just also keep in mind that these types of European projects do not finance investments, but mostly meetings, exchanges, and management experience. So Céline will go in more details about what's going on.
Yes, hello everyone. So I'm going to go into more details on the content of the 2 different stages. So the first stage of the project, and the most important one, is to bring regional stakeholders on board. And for our agency, the topic of waste is very recent. So we did not have yet any experience based on plastic or construction and demolition waste. So at the beginning, we encountered a sort of lack of legitimacy, making it more difficult to mobilize different stakeholders around the projects, especially in the long term, because as Grégoire said, it's project from 4 to 5 years. We had to deal also with new type of stakeholders, which are private companies and federation, both in plastic industries or the building and public work sector, with whom we didn't have any experience yet, so we had to build new links. The benefits of this Interact project is that they present a very broad theme. So in our case, it's improving policies to encourage recycling and waste reduction. So it allows to explore different action paths and to focus on the most relevant for our region especially. So the first stakeholder meetings at the beginning of the project are essential to, 1, identify key actors, but also identify their needs and what role we can play in our region. So then the first step of the project is there's a phase called basically joint thematic analysis. So we start with taking a look at the regional situation and sharing good practices between the European partners, so through different established activities. So I put a few examples, but it's not all of them, and I can unfortunately not go into details, but the idea is to analyze the legislative context and the policies in place, but also the economic breaks and levers to improve the recycling and reuse of building waste in the case of Conderef, or for example, the integration of recycled plastic in the production chain in the case of Plastico. So this part is a good way to, again, identify relevant actors in the region and to involve them in the project, but also, and that's the main point of the Interreg project, is also to identify practices from other European countries and see if we can share them regionally and implement them in the next phase. So it's the same as interregional workshops. So all partners have to organize during the first phase of a project workshops on different topics. I put a few examples again, but just so you know, we are currently organizing a workshop on how to support regional businesses to invest on eco-innovation in plastic production and reuse. So as you can see, it's really, it's workshop more focused on one topic that can interest all partners. Again, it's a good way to bring more involved partners in the project and to also consolidate a regional dynamic. But it can be difficult to involve them in this type of workshop because it's in English, and also before COVID, it's a 2 to 3 day travel, so it can be a little bit tough. And finally, the goal of this Interreg project is to set up and start implementing a regional action plan. So the actions need to be linked to the previous activities and how the these first activities inspired us. So we need to identify really specific stakeholders to carry out the actions with us, since there are not a lot of funding, as Grégoire said at the beginning. So for us, the idea is to maybe identify a couple of public local authorities, for example, that want to develop in their territories recycling and reuse in both projects. We don't have yet set our action plans because we are still at the first phase of the project, but we will probably link these actions to the main fields of competence of our agency, which are training and raising awareness for public authorities, but also encouraging the reduction and recycling and recovery of waste through green public procurement, because we have this competency in our agency. Since the beginning of 2020, we also manage the waste regional observatory. So the idea is to try to link this project to this observatory and maybe develop the collection and analysis of data for the territories and to help them have a better idea of resources, because as we said previously, we don't try not to talk about waste, but how the territories can see either plastic or construction and demolition as resources. And finally, since we have a resource center, try to highlight and share good practices between our regional territories. So we had to be quick, so it's just an introduction of what we started to do thanks to this 2 Interreg projects in both plastic and construction and demolition waste. But if you have any question, it's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Céline and Grégoire. That was very interesting. And as Céline said, they have a lot more to say if you have practical questions on the project. So I'll just wait a few more seconds to see if there is already one. I know we did not answer one question for Tissa and one question for Hanu, but as I said, don't worry, we will answer them at the end of the webinar. Let's see. All right. I don't want to wait too long, so I will ask one question myself, because of course I still have one. So I was wondering, I saw you mentioned on your slide, Céline, that so you were planning pre-demolition audits and demolition activities related to so your construction waste. And I'm wondering how, if you try to include these activities in the local energy and climate plans, and maybe when you're planning the refurbishment, and how you manage to do this, maybe.
Yes, so as of recently, the demolition audits are an obligation for a bigger project, but we try to show that it's important to do them in any project to then be able to have a higher recovery rate for materials. So the original waste action plan actually includes this type of audits as an important action to implement in any projects.
And you put some percentages of waste that you want to recycle in construction, or not specific numbers?
Yes, the regional action plan set a goal of 77% of recovery for construction and demolition waste. So it's a little bit higher than the French law, which was setting, and European law, which was setting it as, I think, 70%. But we are almost reaching it by now. I think we are at 75%.
Okay, great. It's very interesting. Well, I was also very interested in your stakeholders discussion, but in order to keep time, I think we will move on to the next presentation, and hopefully we can talk more about this at the end of the webinar. So thank you again to both Céline and Grégoire for their intervention. And it's time to move on to Spain. So as you might have noticed, we are trying to cover all of Europe. We were in the north. Well, no, we were in the Netherlands, then in the north in Finland, France, and now we're moving south with Francisco Puente, also FEDARENE member and business development director at ESCAN Energy Consulting. He is responsible for finding opportunities and develop cost-effective initiatives based on sustainable technologies. So please, Francisco, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Melissa, and good morning to FEDARENE. Thank you for organizing this event, and also thank you to all the attendees. Okay, my presentation is focused on circular economy in the electric infrastructures, and the reason for this presentation is because we are in fact working with some of the large utilities of Europe in developing projects and solutions for this. And I wanted to share my experience and, of course, listen to the questions and to share knowledge with you. Okay. Okay, I think I've gone too fast. Thank you. Well, okay, sorry. Thank you very much. I like this automatic movement. Okay, okay, we all know about this cycle of circular economy: production, distribution, consumption, reuse, recycle, and design. I think the starting point clearly is the design, the modular design, and so on. And in this presentation, what we are introducing is circular economy focused on two parts. In these electric infrastructures. On the one side, you can see a building, which is civil works, and this is a building of where you can find the transformers that are usually in our neighborhoods in different constructions, but in fact the construction itself, the building, is part of this electric infrastructure, and it's an important, one of the important areas to assess. And the other, let's say, big part of the electric infrastructure are in fact the transformers, pipes, and wiring. So the more electrical equipment and auxiliary equipment for this let's say utilities and distribution and transmission companies. Okay, in the part of this civil work and buildings. One of the first projects we are developing is to reuse recycled concrete. I think this is quite well known, but the characteristics and the use of this recycled concrete are very specific, and they are not all of them, let's say, positive. So in fact, we have been using up to 70% of recycled aggregates, which in fact are cheaper to produce. But on the other side, you need more additives and cement. So at the end of the day, the overall price of the materials are similar to use standard concrete. Also, the energy used in the recycling process is higher than conventional system. So the savings are that we don't need to produce all the concrete and all these, let's say, materials, all of them, but the recycling process, we have to assess that it has this energy consumption. So what we find is that there are some pros: waste reduction, lower density savings in transport, so the transport is less weight, and we reduce the need of the natural matters. And the cons is that we need to remove some pollutants from the recycled materials. This is important. This consumes energy, like for example metals. And the cost at the end of the day doesn't differ too much from the standard concrete. And our calculation is that we approximately the reduction of the use of CO2 emissions is of 350 kilos of CO2 per cubic meter of recycled concrete. So, okay. Also, to improve the use of building materials, in fact, of concrete, we have been testing, and in fact, is used already, is commercial phase, the fibers. In fact, synthetic fibers. And this, I think, is one of the most important improvements we found and we are using in these buildings. Because what we do with these fibers is to strengthen the characteristics of the concrete. Thus, you need less material, let's say. You reduce the amount of materials, which means less cost in transport, and also to improve at the end of the day the overall construction. So reinforced concrete by use of fiberglass or embedded polyester resin is a very good solution. Now we are assessing also the use of graphene. I would say this is more in the demonstrative phase, but also is, let's say, is used. The cost is higher, but it's used. The environmental savings of the synthetic fiber against metallic fibers is 9 times less in the carbon footprint. So the improves in these constructions is we improve mechanical properties. There is no corrosion because we don't use metallic fibers, so there is no corrosion in metal. Less energy required. In the electric constructions, they are not affected by these Foucault currents, which are happening in metals. And the reduction in the use of raw materials is usually more than 50%. The cons in the case of graphene is that there are very few suppliers, and you need a very expert handling because it's a relatively new material. As you can see, the emissions are very low. The fibers only cost 7 kilograms CO2 per square meter. In the part of the electric equipment, the transformers, pipes, and wiring, this is a classical use, the recycled aluminium. I think this is quite well known. So at the end of the day, we use lighter materials, and they are very easy to use, let's say, and easy to recycle. I think this is one of the good points of using this kind of transformers. So we can reuse 90% of the aluminium, and this means savings of the energy costs. It's durable and it's lightweight. And of course, aluminium is not cheap, has high cost. And in the manufacturing you need a lot of energy, of heat, sorry. But the footprint is reduced about 20 times compared to the use of raw materials. Another improvement in these transformers, which is one of the core equipments in these systems, is the use of organic and eco-efficient power transformers. So basically, what we do is to use more emissions-free gases or components like the SF6 free. So we have no use of SF6 in these transformers. And we reduce significantly the CO2 emissions. And also these transformers are more compact, so less noise. So this is also, let's say, improve of the environment. If you have these transformers close to homes or buildings, this is quite interesting. And most of the parts can be recycled. So these transformers are filled with mineral oil or improved biodegradable ester liquid. They are hermetically sealed, which means that in case of SF6, you have some gases emissions, which is pollutant, but in this case, you don't have these ones. And you have also other innovative technologies, and you have not solved in the payments as well. So there are several improvements in this kind of transformers. And this also is they are fully commercial. I wanted to also point out some issue about the smart metering. The smart meters are equipments that are being installed all around Europe in the last years. And some of them use circular economy, basically first in the phase of design and construction, because they are based on modular components. So you use the materials from the old meters that are substituted, and you reuse them. And also when you design the new ones, you make them modular. So at the end of the day, you use 90% of the plastic of the previous meters and 100% of the copper into the new smart meters. You use, in this example, is in fact an example of one of the largest European utilities, Enel, and they use reverse and circular logistics. So they consider the circular economy from, let's say, the start of the matter to the end of the design and the production of the smart meters. So this is a complete circular economy system for the smart metering. Another innovations are, for example, this kind of coatings that are used for different uses, indoor, outdoor, and surfaces. In this case, this photocatalytic coating, this incorporates titanium oxides. And what they do is, thanks to the sun and these coatings, you reduce some compounds in the air, like the NOx, that are harmless to the people's health. So they attract these NOx and they transform them in other chemical components, which are not so harmful for the people. Another, let's say, similar is borosilicate glass, and this is used as insulator in the electric systems. And this material is substituting the plastic, which is much more pollutant, so you don't need to use plastic. And it has similar, even better performance as insulator, and it has a much less impact in the environment. Sorry. I don't know if
you can introduce your own question, Francisco, if you want.
Okay. So yeah, so we have a question for you. You have been listening to my presentation. I would like you to answer this question, but I don't know. Can we see the question?
Yes.
Sorry. I can. Okay. So if you were the hero or the heroine in my history, in the history of the circular economy in the electric system, how would you be recognized by common people? Okay, you will be recognized as Superman, Superwoman, Spider-Man, Spider-Woman, Batman or Batwoman, or Fireman, Firewoman. Please, you could answer the question.
And there is only one correct answer, so think really hard about this one.
Yeah, this is I'm sorry, it's a very difficult for this time of the morning. But...
Anyway, in the meantime, since we're leaving people answer, I would like to thank you for this interesting presentation, Francisco. I must admit, as a communication officer, it was a bit challenging for me to understand all the technologies, but it's really amazing to discover everything that is happening. Sorry, I cannot access the poll. Tuta, if you can maybe answer in the chat, it's fine. And remember, we can take one question from Francisco before going to the last presentation now. So if you have questions, you can also ask them through Slido or through the chat is perfectly fine. Let's see, we have 16 participants. Is it increasing or should we move? All right, let's move to the answer. Fiberman, Fiberwoman. Apparently this was not obvious for everyone, but in the chat people are getting it right.
All questions are okay. I mean, all questions are fine, but the last one was more related to the presentation.
Let's say this. Yes, thank you, Francisco. Let's see, we don't have any question from the audience yet, so I will ask one. I think that could potentially be interesting for everyone. So I was wondering, at some point you mentioned, Francisco, that some of the technologies, I think it was about the fibers, were in the demonstrative phase. So is it the case for everything that you mentioned? And also, when do you think then it will be ready for the market, Spanish market or European market? I actually didn't know if it was only going on in Spain or in Europe.
Yeah, the fibers are already commercial, and so there are some, let's say, plastic fibers, and so not plastic, but let's say this kind of fibers are ready and are commercial, and these are used for many purposes. In fact, what they do is to, let's say, they incorporate in the matter of the concrete, and they put characteristics in the concrete that allow you to use less amount of cement and concrete. So at the end of the day, if you need to construct a wall, you need a certain amount to make it, let's say, enough, strong enough. But if you use the fibers, they put these characteristics that you need less amount of material. So at the end of the day, what you reduce is the overall need of raw material, the transport, and so on and so on. Particularly in the electric system, it's also important that they can substitute the metal fibers, because metal fibers in the electric system can insert in this concrete, like they can insert corrosion, for example. Corrosion is only in metals, not in these other fibers. And also some specific currents, because they are metal, and metal is a good transport for the current. So you avoid all this. And these are commercial fibers. The ones that are not yet commercials are the one based on graphene. Graphene is a material that is being assessed for many uses, many uses. It's more expensive. It seems it's a good component because the tests are quite good. But let's say you can use it, but it would be quite expensive at the moment. So you can use these synthetic fibers better, and they have this characteristic, and they are fully commercial. They're used all around the world. They're produced in several countries, and they are used all around the world.
Perfect. Then we can have our participants using them as well. In the meantime, we received a few comments, but let's see. Since there are many, well, there are two questions. I will take one now, and then we'll leave one for the Q&A at the end. So this one, I would say from a Greek participant, what is the difference between recycled aggregates and new? We saw 350 kilos of CO2 per meter cube. What is for new?
Yeah, the recycled concrete, our estimation is that we use approximately this. I mean, we emit this amount of CO2 for the recycled aggregates. I mean, not for the recycled aggregates, but for the concrete prepared based on recycled aggregates. The amount is not so low because, as I mentioned, the use of the material recycled is, okay, you need to construct this material, but all the energy needed, all the heat, particularly and electricity needed to prepare the new concrete based on these recycled materials is quite high. I mean, you need some energy to crush it, let's say, to destroy it first, to remove all the metals and all the materials that are not useful, and then you need to prepare again the concrete. So is not, let's say, very environmentally friendly in this sense as we could think. It's a little bit better than the preparation of concrete from raw material, so extracting from the mine and so on and so on, but it's not so low. So this is the answer. I mean, it's not so friendly, but you remove, let's say, material and you use this material again. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Francisco. So as I said, there is one more question, but now I would like to move to our final presentation. So we'll come back to this later on. So bear with us. Yes, the correct answer we knew. Congratulations to why you won the Slido poll. And now, as I was saying, let's move up north again to Sweden with Nardono Nimpuno from Innovatum Science Park, who is also involved in the energy agency Energiekontor Vast. And we also have a new topic, thanks to Nardono, which is food waste or food residues, as he told me prefers to call it. So please, Nardono, you have the floor, and I give you control.
Very good. Thank you very much, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to start off by thanking Melissa and, of course, FEDARENE for organizing this very timely event. It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me to talk about this project, Waste to Taste. Let me see if I can gain control over the screen. Let's see. There you go. Yes. So basically, Waste to Taste is a collaboration project which aims at developing process concepts for converting residues or waste products into new sources for food, feedstuff, and energy. And this both on a small and a large scale. And in a nutshell, it's about growing edible fungi in bioreactors using residue streams or waste streams as a substrate. And it's good to keep in mind that in general, in the Western world, we have an excess of starch, that is carbohydrates, but we have a shortage and therefore a net import of protein, which we import from other parts of the world. This project also aims to contribute to decreased environmental impact, create new business opportunities, and to extend the value chain and also curve it into a more circular one. And as I said, it's a collaboration project between researchers at Borås University, researchers at Chalmers University, Energy Agency of West Sweden is involved, and we are a part of Innovatum Science Park, and it is funded by the European Development Fund. This next slide here, let me see if I can change it there. Yes, there. This next slide here, it is important because from the start, it was important for us to have the market business involved. The picture shows the logos of some of the companies involved, and it was important that we included and incorporate local and regional business in this project. On the one hand, we have companies that provide their residues, waste products as an input to the project, like leftover bread from bakeries, barley from breweries, leachate from the West Swedish fish and fishing industry. But we also needed potential manufacturers and users of the processes and equipment developed through the project, because the project is not, of course, not the end goal. The processes and equipment that is the result of the project has to be implemented out on the market. If I go to the next slide here, there you go. Basically, we have a number of challenges that we are facing. We all know these. And I think this picture, it just sums it up basically. We are 7.8 billion people on a planet that is running out of resources. And while we're doing that, we are throwing away enormous amount of food. In the European Union, it is estimated that we throw away 88 million tons of food annually. That is 173 kilograms food that is wasted every year per person. That's approximately 1/3 of food production in the world. Ethically horrible, but of course it has grave environmental and climate impact. At the same time, we are losing arable land in the world. This article from The Guardian shows that in the last 40 years, we have lost 1/3 of arable land in the world. So we are facing an enormous dilemma here. At the same time, as all the people in this forum knows, we are continuing with business as usual, linear business models, which has, of course, enormous impact on the resources, energy waste, used and waste in every phase of the value chain, also in the waste management phase. And it also has a severe impact on climate. For example, if I look at my home country, Sweden, just food management in Sweden accounts for 50% of the country's total eutrophication, and 25%, that is a quarter of Sweden's total climate impact, just comes from food management. So this has to be changed. This linear model has to be changed into a more circular business model, which is what we are aiming for in this project. Basically, by collecting byproducts, residues, residue streams, waste, collecting it, and having fungi, edible fungi, growing in bioreactors at the University of Borås that develops a fungi biomaterial that can be used as a new raw material for food, feedstuff, ethanol, also for pigments in the food industry. And then we are closing the loop and continuously running this circle. So on one hand, it is, of course, about the research. It's about developing the methods used. These are the bioreactors where the fungi is grown, and in the middle you see the fungi biomaterial that is the result of this. And Hannu Kopponen, he talked about the need for large-scale solution at the industrial level, and that's what it's all about. At Science Park, we often talk about grams to kilos to tons. We start out small scale with these deciliter-sized reactors that you see up on the left in the picture, and then gradually they've been upscaled from 4 liters to 26 liters, and now up on a more industrial scale to 1,300 liters. So on one hand, it's about the technology, it's about the processes. But in a circular economy project, this part is so important. It's about creating value chains. We have to get actors to collaborate, connect them, getting them to communicate with each other, to collaborate, to coordinate. So we need, where is the waste coming from? This has to be collected. We have to connect them to actors that can actually transform this waste or residues into the biomass that we need, that then can be sold on the market, collected, and be made into, for example, plant-based hamburgers or plant-based bread or what have you. And then the waste has to be connected and the circle has to be closed. So I can't emphasize this enough, how much the collaboration and the connected value chains are for the success of such a project. So finally, I'm rushing on here. This is really the project in a nutshell. On one hand, it is about regional development. We want to strengthen the research and innovation collaboration. The researchers at Borås University, they've been working on this for 15, 20 years, and we want to use this know-how that they have, the experience that they have. On the other hand, it's about creating business opportunities for existing, mostly small and medium-sized companies, but also for new business opportunities for companies that are interested in taking these processes and developing the new next plant-based hamburger, the new next plant-based milk, for example, other smart solutions. So my final slide, I've been rushing through this, is this one. To me, this is what it's all about. As I mentioned at the start of my presentation, we have an excess of carbohydrates, of starch in Europe and in the Western world, and we have a shortage of protein, so we have to import that. At the same time, we have this vegan or plant-based trend that this project tries to dock into, where demand for plant-based is increasing. Vegan products are going more mainstream, as even non-vegetarians, non-vegan consumers, they start warming up to the idea of non-dairy and non-meat-based substitutes. It's about creating locally produced, smart proteins. This transition has a number of motivators. It can be ethical if you look at animal welfare and climate, has been mentioned. If you look at the meat industry today, we have issues of biocides, pesticides, use of antibiotics. These are things that concern consumers. The impact on climate has been mentioned, the CO2 impact, etc. And then, of course, we have the nutritional content. The researchers at Chalmers University, they are continuously assessing and analyzing this fungi biomass, and this has shown high levels of vitamin D and B, high levels of fiber, and very high levels of protein, matching most meats out there. So basically, locally produced, high nutritional value, and basically fair food in every sense of the word. If you look at animal welfare, if you look at environmental perspective and the climate perspective, and also from a consumer perspective. Well, that is my final slide, and I'd like to thank you again for taking the time.
Thank you very much, Nardono. This was a very harsh transition between construction world and electricity to food. I hope you had time to do the transition in your mind, and I hope you will have questions, because I do think it was also very interesting. But in the meantime, we have a final Slido question prepared with Nardono for you guys. Maybe this can help you trigger questions in your mind. So please connect one more time to Slido and answer this question. How do you contribute to decreasing or increasing food waste in your town or city? Because we know we all individually have to work on this. And you can choose a maximum of 3 answers. But of course, if you select the last one, it doesn't make sense to select the others, I guess. So let's see. I'm happy to see you're still so reactive even at the end of the webinar. So what do you think about that, Nardono?
Well, I had expected nothing less, of course, from an audience that is attending a circular economy seminar. So well done. And I'm happy that hardly think of those issues got 0.
And I'm sure we can do much more. I guess for the compost answer, most of participants might have the same issue as me, as they don't have a garden.
That's a good point.
Let's see if we have questions. I see already one. Can waste coming from meat be processed? That's a good question.
Yes, as I mentioned, we have the residue streams from the fisheries industry, for example, the leaches, the liquid that the herring that is very popular in Sweden, that is provided in and that is processed in, that is very high in protein. So yes, absolutely. These fungi, they don't discriminate. The focus here has not been meat, but yes, that's a good question.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Nardono. Now you can leave your webcam on, and I will also invite all the speakers, if they can, to turn on their webcam for our final Q&A. So now it's your last chance to ask questions through Slido, through the chat, and I will again look in the chat to take the questions we haven't yet. First thing I would like to say is I would like to give an applaud to Fiber Woman in the Slido chat. I think your question was answered by another participant. So the footprint of the recycled concrete is higher than standard concrete, and apparently no. But Francisco, if you can confirm.
Yes, as I mentioned, it's quite similar. I mean, there is a little reduction, but I think it was good to show that it's not so much reduction in the overall process, in the circular economy process.
So, but apparently you have a fan as well with your Slido question. So, oops. So let's see, what else did we have? Actually, I think, Francisco, you had a question for Tissa at the beginning of the webinar. Can you say it orally?
Yes, I think was the one related to the three indicators. My question was for the presentation of CCS Cerebra. Three indicators or actions in circular economy you consider of the most importance. So just to focus a little bit my knowledge in this, because I don't have too much knowledge in this, but which would be the three most indicators or actions that we could consider?
Yes, I can give some comments on that. I think it's very important, but I'm looking from the governmental side that we set targets. That's essential, and we have to do that on a European scale, I think. And another point is that we should work on fair pricing. There's a lot of damage done by resources, and I think fair pricing is very important. And fair pricing you can reach by use taxes in a good way. So vulnerable stuff you have to get more higher taxes, and the good stuff need lower taxes. So that's the second. And from the view of the government, I think we can set one important action. Just use circular public procurement. That's a good accelerator to get to the circular economy. But let me say one thing at last. I think, and maybe that's the fourth. You didn't ask. You asked for three, but I have a fourth one. That's education. I think circular economy, the way we handle goods, should be a part of the curriculum on every education. In my opinion, I said you need it from kindergarten to university. It has to be part of the education curricula.
Thank you, Tissa. That's very interesting.
Thank you.
Now, we also had a question for Anu that I didn't raise yet. It was from Andra Tanais, sorry for the pronunciation, who is working on a project, I guess, related to circular economy. And she is asking that it would be very interesting to know methodologies for assessing what most advanced mean. Do you have such methodologies, Anu?
No, not directly methodologies. No, and would be very interested to hear more about those ones. But since I have the mic on, is it okay, Melissa, to comment a little bit to Nardone?
Of course.
Because it was really an excellent example how the food industry can contribute to the circular economy, and it's not totally novel. It's something I read actually last weekend from a Finnish newspaper that already in 1970s VTT in Finland has studied how to cultivate fungi in these wastewaters from the pulp mills. So very interesting. Thank you, Nadona, for sharing this project with us.
Thank you. Now moving to a question, I think this was for Francisco, still from Andra. So very interesting technologies. She says, do you have specific kits suggested for energy efficiency for different stakeholders?
Yes, well, the answer is that we are now focused on this utility sector, so the electric companies mainly, and all these different solutions we are introducing today are used by them, but we don't have like specific kits for other sectors. Nonetheless, if there is a specific sector that she would like to have some more information, I can try to find out if some of these systems or solutions can be used for that, because some solutions are not for, not for only one sector. Usually some of the solutions are used by different sectors. So maybe I can provide a wider answer if I know if there's a specific interest.
Okay, I'm sorry, I just saw actually that you already gave an answer in the chat, but at least you got to complete this already. I'm glad we had many questions throughout the webinar, so it seems there is a high interest. And I see one last question from Barbara. Is there knowledge about CO2 fixation in aggregates to ameliorate the CO2 reduction potential of the recycled concrete? So I guess it's still for you, Francisco.
Sorry, could you? So I will recycle concrete.
Yes.
Sorry, I was reading another. Yeah.
No worries. Is there knowledge about CO2 fixation in aggregates to ameliorate the CO2 reduction potential of the recycled concrete?
I will have to check about this because we have many indicators about this. The different steps, because these factors, I saw some examples of CO2 emission factors are like average factors. Depending on the overall process, there's a range, let's say, of different indicators, and I don't have in my mind now about this, but if this question is sent to me by email, I can try to find out what information we have and send it back.
Okay, so we will provide, I think in your slides, there should be your email address somewhere. I will check it in any case before sharing the material with participants. Now I would like maybe to hear from our two French speakers, Céline and Grégoire. There were not a lot of questions, but maybe you do have some or would like to comment on the content of this webinar.
Sorry. First of all, it's great to see the complementarities of all this project, and thank you all for sharing. I of course love the intervention from TC to have the political aspect of that, because we are, most of us are in the technical aspect, and we all depends to reach the objective we have on political scale. That's even more the case for Interact project. So it was very interesting to have this link about political aspects and technical aspects in this webinar. So thank you very much for all this.
Thank you, Grégoire. Céline, if you have anything to add or to ask.
I don't have much to add, but it was great to see also all these different topics and how circular economy can be developed in various aspects of our society. So it was great, but I have not a lot of comments.
Perfect. Any final comment or question from our speakers or the audience, if you would like to take the floor before we close? Yes, Nardano, please go ahead.
Well, I love it, Hanu, that you say that this is something new, because that is actually exactly what it is, what it's about. These things are not new. We have been recycling, we have been reusing, we have been using resources throughout human history. It's now just lately that we have this thing called waste. And I think Mr. Stelpstra, he started off by saying there is no such thing as waste. I think that is so important. Circular economy is about seeing leftovers, seeing residue, seeing what is now called waste as a new raw material. And circular economy is about adding value to that early material. And I think that's really important. It's such a basic thing. And it's very inspiring to hear the different examples of the development in this direction. So thank you, everyone for that.
I can only agree. I was really amazed to see the diversity of and innovations that are going on in all those cities, regions, and countries. So I think it's proof one more time that local and regional authorities and energy agencies are really leading the fight against waste across Europe, and that you are all really essential implementers of the European Green Deal on the ground. So thank you everyone for your very interesting presentations. I will also remember that we need the technology and research side and the awareness raising. I'm sure we will have more webinars in the future on this. And actually, before I close the webinar, I will put again a link to our events. We don't have any FEDARENE events, I think, upcoming, but I will also give you a link if you want to register to our newsletter. You can select the different fields you are interested in, and this way you will be invited to our future events. So with this, I think I can close the webinar. So yes, I see you can, of course, promote your own initiatives that are going on right now. This is also why we're having this webinar, to share. And this was really the case today. So I'm really happy with the result. Thank you again, everyone, participants and speakers alike, and wish you a good day, whether it's very cold or not so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See you soon. Bye-bye.